Hello and welcome to Testing APIs with Postman, a part of the Building APIs with ASP.NET Core course. In this module, we'll prepare you for future API development by teaching you the most reliable tool in the industry. My name is Kevin Griffin. I'm an independent software consultant and 10-time Microsoft MVP, focused in ASP.NET development and deploying solutions to Microsoft Azure. It is my pleasure to teach you how to build APIs with ASP.NET Core. In this module, we're going to explore using Postman for testing and debugging APIs. First, we'll discuss why Postman is the industry leader in testing platforms. We'll cover downloading and installation, and then walk you through some of the basics of using Postman for this course. In this section, we'll cover why Postman is the best tool in the industry for API development and testing. In the early days of web-based APIs, testing usually meant you had to write code that would execute the correct calls and send data in the formats you were testing for. Later on, tools like Fiddler came along that would let you capture and create HTTP requests, but those tools are extremely powerful and not suited for everyday testing. Postman came onto the scene as an add-on for Chrome and significantly made the process of testing HTTP-based calls easier. Nowadays, it's available on all platforms that you would develop .NET Core code on, and it has become the de facto standard for API developers around the world. Postman can be downloaded for free at the address below. We'll spend a good amount of time in Postman during this course, but for your knowledge, here are some of the high-level features of Postman. Its primary use is generating requests against REST SOAP and GraphQL APIs. While we're focusing strictly on RESTful-based or HTTP-based APIs, you have other options available to you. We want 100% control over the request that is generated. That means we're not just updating verbs and paths, but we want to control authorization, headers, parameters, and more. And as responses come in, we can preview the responses in their native data type. For example, if you're returning JSON, there is a native JSON reader built into Postman. And finally, you can build test suites against your APIs and run all those tests at the same time to ensure that your APIs continue to run as expected. In this section, we'll tour the common pieces of Postman and set you up for future success. This is the default interface for Postman. There are three primary sections you'll want to understand before making your first request. Highlighted on the screen is the verb selector. Not all requests will be GET requests or POST requests, and this selector allows you to choose the verb that corresponds to the endpoint you're testing against. Next is the path. Now this should be fully qualified, so it can point to localhost or any custom domain that you want. The request settings section is where you dive in to customize the request more. Params is where you can set, edit, or delete query parameters off of the path. Authorization lets you set any authorization data your app needs to make a call. Headers will let you add or override any custom headers that would be sent by the web client. Body is useful for post, put, and patch requests where you need to send data along with the request. There are many types of formats for sending data, and all the popular methods are available. And lastly, we won't use them in this course, but pre-request scripts and tests will help you start building automated test suites against your APIs. And these are useful if you're running multiple requests back to back, because the results of one API might need to be used in another API call. In this demo, we'll walk through building and executing requests against an API with Postman. Welcome to Postman. I've already gone through the process of installing the Postman client, and hopefully you've done the same. And we want to walk through 2 examples of using Postman, and this will translate very easily into some of our upcoming demos where we need Postman to talk to our own APIs. And first time you log in, there's a lot of stuff on the screen, and most of it you don't need to worry about. The big things that I want to talk to you about are going to be this bar across the top. Right now, there's nothing there. But if you hit the plus sign, this will bring up the new request window. And because we haven't built an API yet, there's nothing for us to test against. So we're going to use a service provided by Postman called Postman Echo to build out 2 requests. And these requests are going to just send us back a response no matter what. Now, we talked about in the slides, there's a couple key aspects to the Postman editor. There's the verb, so you get, post, put, delete, patch, and a bunch of others. You probably won't use any of these other verbs. 9 times out of 10, the first 5 are going to be the ones that you really need to practice with. So we'll select Get because we're going to just start with the basic Get request. It's the fundamental thing you can do with an API. And you need to then enter a URL. So my URL is https postmanecho.com, and we'll type in Get because we are making a Get request. If you go to postman-echo.com, there's all types of URLs that you can hit to test different things. Once we have the URL in the bar, we could just hit send and go from there, but we're not going to go that far yet. I want to talk about the third section, which is going to be the parameters, authorization, different things like that. Under params, these are query parameters, which is a very fundamental way to pass data into any API that you're talking to. So let's imagine we are creating an API and we run the pass in paging data. I might have a query parameter that's called page and passes in a page. I might have another one that's called page size, and I could pass in a number, whatever I want. As you start typing in these different query params, you'll notice that Postman automatically changes the URL to reflect the query params that you're putting in. And you can make these changes in either place, and they'll automatically update in both locations. Now let's assume this is just where we wanted to get started. A simple GET request that passes in 2 query parameters. Well, over on the right side of the screen is the send button, and the send button will let you just make the call to the API server of your choice, and Postman Echo is going to return the arguments that we passed in, the headers that we passed in, and then the URL that we had called. So we can look at the response, which is coming back as JSON, and we can see, well, the args passed in were page and page size. That corresponds with what we had passed before. There are also a couple different headers that got passed in with the request. Now we're seeing this as the pretty view. This is the view that you want to see as a developer, but you can also look at the raw results that are unformatted and really not useful at all. Preview works well. Let's say we were getting an HTTP response. Let's say we were getting an HTML response. We could actually preview the HTML instead of just the raw HTML code. So we'll go back to the pretty. And this is just the body of the response that we got. And then a response is really made up of a couple different pieces. The other major important part of a response is going to be the status code. Now over on the right hand side, we'll see that we got a status code of 200 OK. And Postman will give us an explanation of what that status code means. Now if we were getting back other types of response codes, 400s, 404s, 202s, those status codes, again, Postman would explain to you what that means. There's also the amount of time that the request took. This is useful if you care about the performance of your API. So how long did it take to actually make the connection to our server? And then how long was it to download the result? Faster the response time, the better. How big was the request? So this will tell you the total response size of not just the body, but the headers included. And additionally, it'll tell you how big your request was if that's something that you care about. Going across the bar of the response, we can also look at the cookies that got passed along with our response. And the cookies aren't something that you normally use with APIs. If you have a need to know about any cookies being set by your API or the request that you're making, this is what the cookies tab does. You can look at any response headers that are being sent back. These usually include date, content type, the content length. And we're not running tests, but if you're running this call in part of a larger test suite, then you would have test results. So maybe you were running a test to see, does the body return a particular element in the JSON response? So GET requests are pretty simple, but let's dive into a POST request that does a little bit more heavy lifting. Up in the top bar, I'm going to select the plus sign again, and this is going to give me a new request. I'll select post, and for the URL, I'll type in https postmanecho.com/post. I'm not going to set any query parameters this time. Instead, I'm going to go over to the body tab, and this gives me a couple different options for passing in post data. Most of the requests that we're going to make in this course are going to be simple JSON bodies, meaning I'm going to go to the raw radio button, and I'm going to tell Postman to send my data as raw JSON. We'll paste in a simple JSON body, first name, last name, and a website. And then I will press send again to send this data to the Postman Echo service, which will then send me back a response. We can see this response returned 200 OK, meaning everything went fine. And it's telling me what data I passed in, first name, last name, and website. If I were uploading files or uploading form data, this would all be represented in the post request as well. The other thing that you might want to do with some of your requests is that you might have API endpoints that require certain headers to be set. So we'll go over to the headers tab, and you'll see that Postman already presets a couple different header types for us. And these are just headers that are a part of any HTTP request. And down the bottom, I'm going to add my own. We'll call it X foobar, and I'll just add my name, Kevin. Now, when I make this request again, we'll see that X foobar got sent in as one of the headers and the value Kevin. So my API, if it were reading that request, would see the header that's getting passed in. The other thing to note, as you start building out different types of requests, it's easy to wonder, well, I made a request a little bit further back and that worked, but my requests now don't work. What did I change? Any request that you make, and it doesn't matter when it was, anytime you hit the send button, an entry gets made in the history on the left sidebar. So you see I have 2 posts, but if I hit send one more time, it adds a new post request. Even though the request that I'm in hasn't changed, I can now circulate back and forth between all these different requests that got made, and Postman will change all the blanks back to when that original post had been done. So this is really good for tracking the different calls that you're making, testing different values. And if for some reason you want to clear everything away, you can press clear all, and they all get deleted on your behalf. Now, we obviously can't go into every little detail of Postman, but as we start building out APIs of our own, you're going to see us following some of these same basic concepts of setting our verb, setting our path, and then manipulating the body or some of the parameters that we're passing into the request. Hopefully this gets you started, and if you need to play around any, use the Postman Echo service to build out any requests that you might have. In this module, we covered why Postman is a useful tool for API developers. It provides a simple interface to build HTTP requests, but it's flexible enough to take that to the next level if your needs require it.